What is up, everyone? Welcome to TCR Live. I am joined by some of my favorite people, Kyler Bird, Marcos Labrada, and I would always say one and only, but you're not the one and only, as we've established before, Blake Murphy, the seventh and seventh Blake
I'm,
Murphy.
I'm I'm not even the second one anymore now. There's Blake Murphy 7, a quarterback in college, at least for the most part. So I don't even show
Wow.
up in the search results anymore. So I just keep lowering down the ladder as far as it goes. So
But you're an inspiration to me that you just keep going forward despite those challenges of being, kind of not the one and only. So we are back for TCR. We've got some wonderful guests tonight, and this is sort of a preview for the 2025 Arizona Cardinals season, but it's also a little bit of a preview for what we're going to be doing on TCR this season. I'm going to, though, go ahead and let my guests introduce themselves. And Blake, when we get to you, why don't you share a little bit about what you and I have been working on? So we'll start with Kyler, though. Say hi to everyone and introduce yourself for anyone who doesn't know who you are.
Hey, everybody. We're back. Last seen here on TCR, I think, might have actually been one of the last mock draft Mondays. So we're back. We've got the original man himself, our father, we shall all say together. Joe Camo has us here with him today. I'm excited to talk about the 2025 season because it happens every year. But hey, this could be the year. This is the year I'm excited about. And I'm allowed to still be excited for now. But very, very excited to be with all of you to talk about Cardinals football again. We're back.
Marcos.
All right, so we're in year 3 of this rebuild process. So I'm excited because it's been a good part in getting rid of all the other things that are holding us back, and then trying to change the chemistry and trying to change the culture. So I'm excited that this is year 3, because then after this we'll see we're gonna see what everything yields, and if it even yields anything to begin with.
And of course, Blake.
yeah, Blake Murphy on Twitter, as he said, at Blake Murphy 7. And as far as for some news on our end, we've been working behind the scenes with Joe, looking at a lot of the times we've been creating a lot of content, being on each other's shows. We realize that there's a lot of work we can do together versus separately. So as far as for the news with our end, the Redbird Reboot podcast with me and Marcos, we're going to be joining the Cardinal Rule, kind of starting this new thing of the Cardinal Rule Network. We haven't workshopped everything out, but we've got a couple of new podcasts joining. It's going to be audio and video podcasting that we'll have for you guys. Really excited just to be able to bring you the same content you guys have known and loved, but also being able to bring more content by kind of doing more together, which is super exciting for all of us.
Well, I'll tell you, it's exciting for me. I've loved working with you guys. I've been working with Marcos since he started writing for the now defunct AZ Sports Underground, and I'm so excited that now he's working with you. And we have a lot of shared audience, so it just kind of makes sense to kind of bring our platforms together and kind of get one place. And those of you who may have noticed, Jackie has started a podcast here on TCR as well. And we're going to have multiple content creators kind of making it sort of just this kind of TCR family of podcasts. And, so I'm going to be doing the TCR live our live stream / podcast with Kyler and maybe some rotating guests throughout the season on Tuesday nights. We'll have more information about the Redbird Reboot podcast with Blake and Marcos. And we're going to have some actual podcast outputs as well that we're going to kind of work on. So we're all excited to be working together in a kind of a more direct way. So absolutely excited. We have one more sort of, not exactly a guest, but I sort of made a scheduling snafu. I have a fantasy football draft that starts in 23 minutes. But instead of canceling, oh no, we're not canceling. TCR and family are doing this. When it's my time to pick, live, and you all
Awesome.
control me or help me. It's a keeper league, so we'll kind of come back to that. Oh, hey, Kyler. We'll come back to that as we go through this. But I'm also going to be doing a fantasy football draft live while we're here. But we're going to preview the Cardinals season, and we're going to kind of get right into it. And I've asked everyone to kind of come prepared to talk about a set of questions, and we're going to jump right into it. What are you excited about this season? Kyler, why don't you get us started? What are you excited about this 2025 Arizona Cardinals season?
Overall, I'm just excited to hopefully see what has looked like a pretty clear strategy from the beginning of the Monty Fort JG era come to fruition. We're going to see this year if that strategy is actually going to work. We heard a lot last year about that 6-4 start almost being an internal surprise, that the team itself is not necessarily expecting to be at that point of contention, and it showed on the back end of the season. And we can talk about whatever the back half of the season curse is for us. I don't know if anyone's really truly nailed that down, but I think last year it being, oh, we're actually a little bit further ahead than we thought we'd be in year two. We always expected to be in some type of contention, maybe not for a Super Bowl, but at least for the division in year three. So I'm excited to see if the Cardinals can actually finally reach the point of being a legitimate force in the NFC West, because that's the first step to anything. The path to the playoffs should always be the goal of winning your division. It's the most immediate way to get in. And if we can finally at least be in that conversation, legitimate conversation, beginning of season to end of season, I think we're entering a new era of Cardinals football. So there's that potential there to enter a new era. Very excited for it.
Marcos, what are you excited about?
Well, just like I mentioned, this is year three of the rebuild process, and we've had this type of like knowledge of like a strategy that gets implemented when a team is rebuilding, and rebuilding could just mean it doesn't have to necessarily mean the quarterback needs to be changed in a organization. Sometimes the coach, when he goes from a different coach and you have players that are part of the old regime and then you're changing them to the new regime, that's called that rebuilding process, because you have no idea what's going to happen. You have no idea who's going to come up, who's going to be a superstar, who's going to be a bust, who's going to get traded away, or who's going to be signed. We have no clue. Now, this offseason was one of the best and busiest off seasons that I can say Monty Ford has put together. And I haven't always been, on Monty Ford when it comes to like, giving him his flowers. I will give him his flowers this year. That defensive line looks scary. So that's what I'm looking forward to, and that's what I'm excited about.
Blake, what about you?
Honestly, it's going to be Gillikin punting has got to be the biggest one. I'm only saying that because his name is Blake. So anytime there's a Blake, obviously I get involved, which didn't work out well with Sean Murphy bunting, but that's how it goes. It's got to be that this is going to be Kyler Murray's second year off of the ACL. You want him to be healthy enough. He said he was still affected last year. That means it's time to see, can the innovation of the offense take place? And what do you get from Marvin year two? What do you get from Trey Benson year two? Because you want to know that you've got a young future on the offensive side. On defense, you're going to be looking at now having some depth at defensive tackle you haven't had before. You've got a legit edge rusher. The Cardinals are going to go from Dennis Gardeck and Xavier Thomas to adding a promising rookie in Jordan Birch to that bunch, plus a guy who is a Super Bowl MVP on the defensive side of the ball in Josh Sweat. You got to also talk about the most promising cornerback since Patrick Peterson in Will Johnson. There's a lot of hype around this kid. He's going to have issues and problems. We saw that in preseason. And then I think Gillikin for real is one of those things that when you talk about special teams, I do want to see, can those guys get to a Pro Bowl? Gillikin probably could have made it last year with how many punts were downed inside of the 10-yard line. And you want to know if Chad Ryland, is he going to continue making these clutch kicks, or is it going to turn the way like we saw in New England and the Seattle game? A lot to be able to look forward to for the most part, because we'll finally get some answers to these questions we've had all off season long.
Yeah, and I'm going to mirror one thing that you all have said in terms of the excitement about the roster building. When you look at GM, coach, or quarterback in terms of my confidence, my highest confidence is in the GM, Monty, because the way he's done the rebuild is textbook from all the things I believe you should be doing based on things I've talked about in the past. And this is not stuff from my own philosophies. These are things that come from people who I trust their opinions on how you do this. But what I'm going to say I'm really, really excited about is this defense. This defense was coached up by Nick Rallis to be not great and maybe not necessarily good, but competent with talent that was not at the level that you need for an NFL roster. And now they have NFL level talent. So I'm excited to see what Nick Rallis can do with real NFL level talent. Now, some of it's still young and developing, But nonetheless, as you talk about the defensive line, I'm excited. Now, I'm going to say hey to some folks here real quick before we get to the next question. We got Silver Wolf AZ in the house. Thanks for being here. We got Red Sea. We have Arthur. We have King Plumtree. We got our buddy Saltiest Gaming. And we got our friend Brian Abdallah. We have Calvin, the OG channel supporter. We got Dana in the house. We've got Grimdark, another longtime TCR friend, and we got KR Gordon. Thank you all for being here. Now, because I'm doing a fantasy football draft, I'm going to do in true Serpent draft fashion. I'm going to lead off this next topic. And the next question is, what are you nervous about? And Blake, one of the reasons I'm going to kind of do this is because I'm going to build off something you said you were excited about. People who've been kind of, listening to my content for a while know that I've been a Kyler Murray apologist. I believe in the arm talent, which I think is an underrated. His ability to throw that ball anywhere on the field ranks right up there with anyone. The leg talent we know about. The questions have been about consistency and does his stature size impact his ceiling, right? So it's been the consistency and those games where there's games where he looks like a Pro Bowl. There's games where he looks like an MVP candidate. And then there's games where he looks like Daniel Jones, right? I think the Athletic Football podcast said that was what his low points were like. I've been a believer and a defender, and I do not change my opinions quickly, but I do change my opinions. And for better or for worse, I'm slow to change my opinions, but that's because I put a lot of time into developing them. And I'm still a Kyler believer in terms of the talent, but I am nervous because this is the put up or shut up year for Kyler. You can make reasonable arguments for why all the other years weren't great, right? The Kingsbury system, its viability long-term in the NFL, right? With all the things we talked about, the receivers, the coming back from injury in the first couple of years of this system. And listen, if you look statistically, he's not been a bad quarterback at the raw numbers. He has twice as many touchdowns as interceptions, like a 64.7 completion percent, a 90.94, 92 quarterback rating. He's been statistically a good quarterback, but when you see how it plays out, it's so uneven and he needs more consistency. So I believe he can be more consistent, but I am also nervous because if he gets a catastrophic injury, well, that's a whole other question about can you continue to work with that. But if he is reasonably healthy and continues to be inconsistent, I will start to change my view and my perspective on Kyler Murray as this quarterback for this team. This is the pivotal year for me as a Kyler Murray apologist, is the make it or break it. I believe he can do it, but I am nervous. Blake, we'll let you kind of get the Serpentine draft going back again. I think you're muted, my friend.
Muted.
Yeah, correct. I didn't want to speak too soon, but part of when it comes to Kyler is I think a lot of times he gets taken for granted by Cardinals fans. You look at especially the 2023 season where the team started out with one win out of 9 games, and then of course there's the throwaway game where you had Cardinals, now Clayton Tune, now Packer Clayton Tune at least was there. I think a lot of it comes down to what the team and what the fans have expected with the number 1 overall pick would have been lightning, electric playmaking, being able to contend in a pretty weak overall NFC when it comes to quarterbacks. And we've kind of seen as Kyler year in and year out, with the one season in 2020 notwithstanding, it's been about 3,400 or so passing yards, about 20 touchdowns, about 12 interceptions, and the team ends up averaging probably about 7 to the one year we saw 11 wins. I think it may have been 10 wins actually that year because they lost the final game of the season. And what you want at least is to say you want a little bit more. Now, the question has always been how much of that has been on the quarterback, how much of that's the situation. You can take a look at a guy like Sam Darnold last year, goes to the Vikings. You're in a situation where he throws for over 4,000 yards, has a 35 touchdowns and 12 picks. Like, he just had a much better year for the most part. And I think when it comes down to when you're talking about what does sustainable quarterback play look like in the NFL, you can kind of get into a rhythm where you can have a quarterback that is good, but isn't necessarily a top 5 or even top 10 consistently, with maybe a couple of good years. The one I think most fans will think of is Matt Ryan. He goes out there, gets to the Super Bowl one year, is consistently a top 10 quarterback, but you just want to be able to see that you can make a Super Bowl and have that shot at winning a title, winning a championship. So I think when it comes to this year with Kyler, you really get to see this year. He's got a defense that's been built in now from essentially over the past couple of years. You've got some offensive weapons. The run game last year was top 6 in the National Football League, no questions about it. Now you're hoping that you'll be able to come back in and replicate that again. Maybe at some point during the season, you can go out and trade for a receiver. I've talked about that every year you get some receiver on a bad team that wants to have a chance for a title. The question is going to be, are the Cardinals in a spot where they haven't put enough around Kyler, and this is the year where you kind of prove a lot of those doubters wrong? Or is this going to be the year where you kind of look at him and say, there's guys like a Tyrod Taylor, guys like an Alex Smith for the Kansas City Chiefs. Teams went out and got like a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes. They realized we've got a good quarterback, we got sustainable, but we need to do better if we're going to be this consistent challenger for a championship. And I think some of that goes in, at least, is you get a Super Bowl win with Russell Wilson. He's a shorter quarterback. You're able to see guys who are shorter quarterbacks find success in the National Football League. It's kind of that year for Kyler Murray to have to prove that. And I think that's one of the biggest questions, of course, is going to be how much of the Cardinals are needing to have talent around. Because Russell Wilson had the Legion of Boom around him, Marshawn Lynch running the football. How much of that is that you say, yeah, he's the quarterback who can take us there for the most part? And how much of it is, teams will kind of keep him in the pocket, mush the rush, try to be able to force some of these throws where he's diagnosing the defense and is like, I got to take that deep shot to the outside receiver because that's a passing play that I can do, because on a deep drop back where I can attack a defense over the middle of the field, it's going to take time. Guys are going to get in his face. There's going to be a pass rush that's in place for the most part. Like, you got to sometimes stand in the pocket, take a big hit, and still be able to deliver the ball. It's a lot harder to do that if you're a short quarterback versus if you're a Josh Allen or if you're a Pat Mahomes type of guy who has that athleticism to be able to take some of those deep shots. That's going to be really interesting to see, because a lot of Cardinals fans are giving up on Kyler Murray, I think, a little bit too soon, just writing off this season, while there's other Cardinals fans who probably would keep Kyler for the next 2, 3, maybe even 4 years, even if the statistical output and game results were kind of even, just hoping that he could take that next step forward. And I think a lot of fans are hoping we see that next step this year.
Marcos, what are you nervous about?
Well, as I'm checking the offensive stats here, the thing that gets me kind of nervous is I do look at his passing chart, and I'm not going to, I'm a Kyler critic, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the things about Kyler Murray, because it's actually kind of like it's not really that important if you have a really good defense and you got a really good run game. At that point, you could have somebody that just doesn't turn the ball over, and you have like a good quarterback or a winning team at that time. And if you look at the Super Bowl teams that, like, especially like the Eagles and stuff, people would like to say that Jalen Hurts is not as good as Kyler Murray, or Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts are very comparable. Well, look at what the Eagles had. They did have a really great defense, a stout defense, and their run game, like, we can talk about it all night long. But the thing that I worry about is that after 8 games, there's usually a rule that after 8 games, whatever you see put down by a player, usually that means that's what's going to be the case, and it's like that on defense too. And we're in year 2 of the system. He's had, I believe, more than 18 games in this in this scheme, and his heat chart looks kind of identical. He's hitting more over the middle throws from 10 to 15 yards, which is better consistency. He's not able to target those as consistent as you would like to, because a lot of this Kyle Shanahan / Drew Petzing system does predicate hitting that over the middle. Like, they run dagger, and on dagger, you hit the outside receiver that's making a cut back in, because the guy that's running the go route from the slot is a clear out person. When you're able to hit that as often as you can, you could really start punishing these teams that love to be in Tampa 2 and too high systems and whatnot. But anyways, aside from that, aside from that is just the defense. Now, we can say that the defense looks like it's improved. We can say just based on like talent. We don't really know what's going to happen with this defense until we see them on the field. Is everything going to mesh? those linebackers, aside from Mac Wilson, they're very important to like a defensive scheme in zone. I think you know this, Joe. It's a weak link zone to have, like, in coverage, and obviously on offense, your offensive line is a weak link zone. How's all that going to mesh? That's what makes me nervous right there, because that's the bedrock of this team.
Kyler, what are you nervous about?
I'll make it pretty simple because the things that make me nervous are a combination of everything that has already been talked about. It is make it a break a year for Kyler Murray. I think everyone's pretty much on board with that. Need to see that he's at least competent enough to be the guy forever, or else you need to start looking at the future possibly. But what makes me the most nervous is the unknowns of having a largely rebuilt defense. What if the defense does not live up to the expectations that we have set on it? And it's not just fan expectations, which I think are very high for the defense. Most fans are very high on that side of the ball right now. And it's because we got all of these exciting moves in free agency and we dedicated pretty much the entire draft to it. But what if it doesn't? We've seen steady progression with Gannon and Rollis. Their first year, they come in, they have almost no defensive or like true NFL talent on that side of the ball, and they rank dead last in DVOA. Last year, they're middle of the pack. They're 14th in DVOA, which in 1 year is an amazing adjustment for a defense that was still pretty lacking in a lot of NFL talent. And now you can look, at least on paper, and see this is a defense that has NFL players on it, which is back to our most excited thing. We have NFL caliber players on this team now. It's awesome. It's a great feeling. But still, there are many ways that cannot work out. And if we don't take our projected jump in DVOA, it's supposed to go up to 7th, is what the projections say. If the Cardinals can do that and maintain the same, even exactly the same offensive efficiency as last year, then we are a playoff football team. Last year would have been completely different. But if it doesn't happen, then things can fall apart pretty quickly. So I am nervous about something in the ether. The defense doesn't work out to our expectations.
So we're doing the serpentine draft thing. So Kyler, you're up again. What do you expect to see from the offense this year? This can be what you think the numbers will look like or the strategy, however you want to interpret this question. This goes for everyone. What do you expect from the offense this year?
Okay, so I expect a 3-headed offensive attack that, not including Kyler Murray as his own thing, as a dual threat quarterback. The offense will be Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, and James Conner. Everyone else is a supporting player to those big three. And I do still think, based off the success that we have found and Drew Petzing's tendencies, James Conner will continue to lead this offense. So I still am leaning towards we might not see this incredible statistical season for Marvin Harrison Jr. even this year. And that is just the scheme that he exists in. I don't think that really has any bearing on his talent level. I thought he had a great rookie year too. He was one great game away from being a 1,000-yard receiver as a rookie, and the entire narrative about him would be different. If he had just passed the magical number of 1,000 as a rookie, and you said he had 1,008 yards and 8 touchdowns, everyone would have said, all right, he had a really good rookie season. But alas, he didn't. And I don't know that his numbers will be gaudy even now. He is, in essence, wide receiver 2 in this offense. Trey McBride is the number 1 passing threat for this team. So I expect a few things, fantasy-wise, which I know you're about to start. Trey McBride's season last year, that's a weird statistical outlier. He will have a lot more touchdowns this year. Marvin Harrison Jr. will be used in slightly different ways. We saw some training camp stuff where he was used in a lot more motion and not just as this stick him as the X and let him do that every single play, which was an amazing misuse of his talents. Let Zay Jones do that. Let him be the sacrificial X and go do that. And let Marvin Harrison Jr. Do the thing that he does very well. So I think there will be adjustments, but I don't know that we're going to see a drastically different offensive output from this team this year.
Marcus.
I can almost, with a lot of certainty, and this could be clipped for later on the season. You guys can come at me, or you guys can like clip this and say you don't know anything or whatnot. I can almost guarantee you that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to go over 1,000 yards. There is a prominent role, and it's not just to say like there's a lot of motion in Kyle Shanahan type of offenses, but it doesn't predicate just the X having to be off of that position and then not like be the primary focus on an offense and whatnot. If you were to see like all these Kyle Shanahan type offenses, there's always that dominant X. There's a Brandon Ayuk's, there's a Julio Jones, there's all these receivers that are the dominant X receivers that you'll send them on a motion every once in a while, but they're the isolated guys away from the field side, from the trip side. You have your guy one on one because he can win on that side. That's part of the reason why those guys are so dominant. But in these offenses as well, you always have a good offensive player on both the tight end and the wide receiver position. So I'm kind of looking for that next iteration of the George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk like partnership, and that is what will show you the type of success that you'll see from this offense passing the ball when those two guys are able to go off. You have one guy attacking the middle, being a big bodied receiver, being a mismatch against like linebackers and whatnot, and then you got your guy to the outside that you can shift, you can move around, you can do short motions and get him on like free releases. You can do switch releases with him and another receiver to be able to clear out on these type of concepts and whatnot. But you can do all these type of things and still have him be the primary target. I think that's part of the reason as to why during training camp we've been seeing a lot of targets going to two people in particular. We both know who those people were: Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. That's a little bit of foreshadowing what we have to see like this upcoming year.
Blake.
I remember to unmute myself this time. I'm going to go with a little bit of a off the wall take here, which is that I'm going to predict that something is going to go wrong on offense because something always tends to go wrong. Last year, you saw the right tackle spots went down, and Marvin Harrison Jr. was not quite up to being the wide receiver when they needed him to be. So we saw the Cardinals be a very run-first team for the most part. We saw them being able to be incredibly effective at getting explosive running plays. So I'm going to say that something is going to go wrong, whether that's an injury. Maybe the expectation is that there's going to be a wide receiver 2 that's going to step up. Maybe it's going to be that there's God forbid, an injury to one of James or Kyler. I think, though, what will happen is that someone's going to also step up, whether that's going to be the running backs behind James Conner if something happens there, whether it's going to be the Cardinals throw the ball successfully more, or whether it is hey, Trey McBride, he's going to miss the next 3 games. Well, some wide receivers are going to step up and fill in the gap to where we're not going to see the offense just collapse or crumble. Heck, you want to take Kyler Murray at it? Sure. Jacoby Brissett's going to step in there. They'll be able to make do with what they have for the most part, and I think be able to win a game or 2 while he is out for the most part. That's going to be what I'll predict for the offensive side of the ball, and I think that Kyler talked about originally earlier for the most part, that thanks, Kyler Bird, for kind of stealing the idea of mostly the same as last year, but now then we're going to look for what are going to be the tweaks or what is the innovation that we're going to see, because they've said they're wanting to have more innovation. So let's go ahead and see it. That's what we're expecting. If we get identical to last year, and it becomes easier to stop, the offense takes a step back, you're going to need the defense to then take a step up.
Yeah, I think with this offense, the style is going to be the same, except it's going to be more effective and efficient in executing what they were trying to do. Because what they were trying to do was have a run heavy offense that keeps the defense off the field because of the limitations in personnel and defense. And they were trying to take occasional shots downfield and make some explosive plays. So grind, explosive, grind, right? That was the strategy, I think. They got the grind stuff down for the most part. They ran really well, but they kept missing those explosives. I forget who it was, but it might have been on Amina Khan's podcast. They were talking about how ineffective they were in their deep shots, especially to Marvin Harrison Jr. inordinately. Were you talking about that, or you want to jump in? Yeah.
I was just waiting for the professor to call my name.
Yes.
This is a stat that I know because it hurt me deeply when I found out. But as far as that explosiveness goes and use of Marvin Harrison Jr. goes, Cardinals threw 44 go and fades last year. We completed 8 of them.
Yep.
It was a remarkably bad completion percentage, and that was the frustrating use case of Marvin Harrison Jr. last year, was just seeing time and time again, it felt like, on big third downs, oh, Marv on the outside, let's chunk it up, hope he can turn around and get the ball. And guess what? It didn't happen that much. Is
Yeah.
that part of his skill set? Absolutely. Was that a lot to expect out of a rookie wide receiver too? Yes, and not all the balls are great either. But I do know that 44, we completed 8. So the
Yeah.
explosiveness of it just wasn't
Mhm.
there.
I can add on to that to you as well, is that the Cardinals were the lowest team in the NFL on third and more than 10 yards. They had the least amount of passing yard completions overall. They would pick up those third downs by running the ball, not by
Yeah.
throwing. We didn't see Marv get used as much in the intermediate routes, but he did have a lot of effectiveness on pretty much every route he ran except for post routes. They ran post routes a lot, didn't have as much that they had available in the deep passing game. And like, when you're talking about some of the skill sets and strengths, yeah, that was a skill set that Marv had. We just didn't see them connect last year like how we expected them to. And it's something that we're going to want to see this year as well, because the Cardinals targeted Marvin Harrison Jr. behind the line of scrimmage on 0 plays. I think there was one catch he had like at the line of scrimmage. Now, that wasn't necessarily his game in college. Like, he wasn't a yards after the catch sort of guy, but just having these quick passes to be able to get the quarterback Kyler in rhythm, get Marvin involved in the game. We talked about how they would, as the Cardinals would go with Larry Fitzgerald to keep that catch streak going, they would just pop him a bubble screen every once in a while just to be able to do that early. You'd have a ton of room that you'd be giving, because you're like, come on, it's going to be Larry Fitzgerald for the most part like that. Like, you're going to be expecting him to get a little bit of cushion, get a bit of space. Just being able to see them get so dead set into some of their ways that we want to see a huge change this year, because as teams know, if they can force Kyler into these deep outside go balls that are difficult to complete for the most part, then you're going to be talking about the Cardinals already limiting themselves as far as for what they're capable of offensively through the air.
Yeah. So I think they're going to regress to the mean, right? They're going to, which they were so like outside, like below the mean in terms of how often you hit those deep plays, right? They're like typical teams do better than that, right? It was way below the means. At minimum, they're going to regress to the mean, which will be progress, if not exceed that, right? So I think they're going to keep the grind out, and then they're going to hit some of those explosives. And I'm going to use this pivot turn to come around to the defense, because I think that defensive strategy and offensive strategy, as I talked about, really are complementary, that they are going to continue. They're not going to be the Miami Dolphins style offense. They're not going to become, in my opinion, a throw it down the field constantly. They're going to continue to be a run first, but they're going to hit those explosives, and they're going to try to be efficient with explosives mixed in. And the defense is going to continue to try to do what they do on their side to, except they're going to be better. Right. So that I think they're going to continue to try to minimize how much time the defense has to be on the field, but the defense is going to be better. So what I expect to see from the defense, much better against the run, I think, with guys that they brought in like Alvin Tomlinson, Calais Campbell. Also better rushing the passer. They schemed out the pass rush a bit, but they're going to be better, and that's also going to help the coverage units. So I think the defense is going to be really good, and I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit later in whatever questions coming down the pipeline. But I do think the style of play is going to be the same. They're just going to be better at it, is my take. So Blake, coming back to you around the turn on the defensive side, and as an update, I think I've got 6 picks until a fantasy draft pick. So, but Blake, you're up. Talk about what you expect from the defense this year.
Yeah, for the defense, the biggest thing I think that we'll see this year is an increase in their turnover differential, because as we know, the Cardinals want to run the ball. We know that there was a couple of turnovers like Kyler did last year. We also saw that the defense really got worn down as the season went on. There wasn't really the ability to just make a play. If someone gets one stop, someone gets an interception, someone forces a fumble. In the Panthers game, you're talking about the Cardinals going into the Rams game with a chance for the division on the line instead of already being eliminated and having to play spoiler. I think that the defense not being able to force turnovers, while they did actually get quite a few throughout the season, the offense, as we saw, wasn't able to generate the same explosive plays through the air. And as a result, those late season turnovers really kind of let them down. The Cardinals are at -3 with their differential. I think if you say you're going to add a pass rusher in Josh Sweat, have more help up front in the defensive line, we'll see if Calais Campbell, it's his final season, most likely has anything in the tank. But being able to have guys who can take the ball away, such as Will Johnson was a big ball hawk in college with the ability to sit back in zone coverage, be able to read the quarterback. We saw an interception like that he already had in training camp. Seeing Garrett Williams potentially on the outside is going to be interesting. And also being able to look at who else ends up taking on kind of that veteran role. Can Max Melton step up there? Like, I do think that just adding someone like a Will Johnson and then being able to get Deidrean Taylor-Demerson on the field a bit more so that you can rotate through your safeties to get Budda Baker back onto the field, sometimes in maybe not always in the box. I think that means you're going to see the defense increase the amount of takeaways they have. Now, whether you want to say that that ends up being an increase on the offense's ability to put up points, that I think you can argue as well. But for now, I think that's the biggest thing that's been lacking is Cardinals got better against the run. They got better against the pass. I think that they can take that next step forward. And the biggest way you'll see the increased sacks, increased run stopping, and increased interceptions is in that turnover differential.
Before we get to Marcos, I have a pick coming up in 2 picks. It's a keeper league. I have Justin Jefferson, Jameson Williams, and Josh Jacobs. So I've got 2 starting receivers, 1 starting running back. My pick is 2 picks away. I can tell you if Hampton's still there, I'm taking him.
Have to,
right? But if he isn't, then here's what I'm looking at. Am I reaching for Kamara or another running back? Or am I sticking and taking Mike Evans or Marvin Harrison Jr.? Or do I reach for a Trayvon Henderson? Historically, I just don't trust the Patriots, but I know it's not Belichick, so maybe that they're going to be better with fantasy running backs. But please, Hampton, please be there.
Yeah, it is Vrabel.
Oh,
yeah. I think they're watching your stream, Joe. They must be knowing what's happening with it.
Someone's listening. All right, I really need running back, but this is a 3 receiver league, so 3 starting receivers plus another flex. I don't know. Do I just go Marvin Harrison? I do think he's going to be better.
I think he'll be better, and he'll get touchdowns. Even last year, he had 8 touchdowns.
Yeah,
it wasn't bad.
I will say this for running back, at least for each of those. One thing that I know is a stat is that James Conner outperforms his draft scenario every single year.
True.
So that's the safest pick. If you really want to roll the dice and say Marvin has a 1,200-yard, 9-touchdown sort of season, then I think that's where you can go with the 3 receivers. I'm more of a fan of recognizing that there's a lot of receivers going around and that running backs who are going to carry the ball, get 1,000 yards, get 10 touchdowns are the rarer type in the league, even though the Cardinals are going to mix it up a bit more this year. You tell me that Trey Benson gets them like 80 yards of the way and then James Conner gets them the last 20, I'm going to be able to buy that.
I got to tell you, there's some running backs I like a little later. You've got RJ Harvey with Denver.
I've taken him, yeah. I like him.
I think I'm going to go Marvin Harrison, be the homer.
All right. I was going to say between him and then with Evans for the most part, Evans is going to be a fun spot. But I agree with everyone who's like, should I take Marv here? And I say, like, yeah, he's worth the ADP right now, which is fun.
AVB, our friend Aaron in the house, cannot trust Marv. I'm going to trust him. Maybe I'm going to regret it, but I went with it. James Conner just went for someone else. So I've got a while till I pick again, so we will get back. So Marcos. Oh, hey, there's Marcos. We are back with you. What do you expect to see from the defense this year?
What I'm wondering is if they're gonna play a lot more man coverage than what they did last year. They ranked 5th in zone coverage calls. They ranked 28th in man coverage calls. And usually, like most defensive coordinators, only call more zone than they do man coverage because they don't have the talent to run man coverage. It's almost like a thing where, like, if you don't have the talent on defense, you live in zone. Usually it's cover 2 and cover 3. They ran cover 3 eighth most, 42.1% of the time. They ran cover 3, so that's where they lived at. That was their base. And they lived between that, cover 0, which they ran 7th most, which wasn't too much, and the exotic coverages, which was ninth. So those are like the drop eight coverages and whatnot. So they were kind of like what you think about in the modern day basketball, where people take either jump shots or they drive to the hoop. That's where they lived at. They either sent everybody or just kept the majority of the people back in zones to rally and tackle and whatnot. And if they have more talent, which you would think they do up in the defensive line, are they going to call more man coverage? That's going to be what's going to be interesting, because I know for a fact that if you do have better talent, better bodies, I think they will be calling more man coverage, and we'll see more plays. We'll see more sacks happening. We'll see, like, the defense be able to force fumbles more often than not.
Kyler, what do you think?
I think, regardless of my earlier thing about what I was nervous about, I think the defense will be good. And I do expect that the complete success of that entire unit will start on the defensive line and work its way back. If that part of the team works as well as we are wanting it to and thinking it will based off the additions, then I think this defense is going to work. Even with the young secondary, which is maybe a question, although I think we've done a good job of getting young, good talent, just really young and inexperienced. Do you have a pick coming up?
I got 5 picks, so you're good.
Okay. Um, if the defensive line works and we can raise, in particular, something like our pass rush win rate, where we were 28th last year. We just were not affecting the quarterback very much, which is interesting that we ended up 10th, I think, in the league in sacks, but it was spread out amongst a bunch of different guys who weren't true threats every single time they're on the field. So I expect we will have one guy, Josh Sweat, who will have double-digit sacks, be the guy who had some of that old school, like Chandler Jones type of role. That is his job to do. He's a good edge setter too. But one guy with double digit sacks and still have a heavy rotation. But because we have NFL talent, I think Rollis and Gannon will roll back a lot of that heavy rotation that they've been notorious for. They were doing that out of necessity. The players on that team were not of a proper caliber, and they were doing the best that they could with them. So I think the defense will look more different than a lot of people expect because they have better players this year. And I think the coaching staff and the players will rise to that, and the success will flow defensive line backwards. I am, caveat, incredibly nervous about the linebacker room. I don't think it's great. Mac Wilson Sr. is a good player, but inside linebacker is the weakness.
I am 2 picks away. Devontae Smith, Travion Henderson, George Pickens, Jalen Waddle, Brees Hall, Zay Flowers, Joe Burrow. Those are some of the players there. RJ Harvey. Let's see. So someone commented on here. Joe gets his first pick. So we'll. I don't. In case someone's watching, I don't know if we want to signal this too much until I'm on the board. But I got 2 picks, so we'll see where we go with that. Whoever's up is taking their time. So I was hoping we beat me now. So I'm going to set this next question, and then when my pick comes up, then we'll go. So Kyle, you may have some time to do this because they're kind of taking their time on their picks. But we're each going to kind of share one random prediction about the team or a specific player on the team. It can kind of be anything that we're predicting. So Kyler, why don't you go ahead and kind of get us started with a random prediction?
Okay.
Ooh, my pick is next.
All right, my random prediction though.
Yeah.
I think that Rollis and Gannon will find a way to get Dater and Taylor Demerson on the field quite a bit this year. So my random prediction for a random player on the defense is that Rabbit will play more than 33% of snaps this year. He'll find his way onto the field. From everything I've heard, he has played his way onto the field. So finding a way to add a third safety or rotate him out with Jalen Thompson, not sure what we're going to see, but I do think he will have a much increased role on defense this year.
Someone doesn't believe. I'm assuming you mean Kyler Murray. because we know Kyler Bird will not suck this year. Kyler Bird will be
Uh,
awesome and on his game as always. But Nick Hell is not believing in Kyler Murray. So we'll see about that. So my pick is next, and whoever is up has 55 seconds. I don't know if they're going to make their pick or not. I know who I'm taking already if they're still there. I kind of mentioned it earlier. Oh, my turn to draft. Okay, I just think you got to go with the running back for Denver, RJ Harvey,
do it.
right?
Yes, that's the correct pick.
That's that to me. That's a lot of people talk about. He's going to get a lot more, a lot of touches. They're only predicting 772 rushing yards in their projection
Mm.
for Yahoo. I think he's going to exceed
I'm
it.
okay with that pick. I'm a little nervous that they're going
Okay.
to see another starting running back get a lot more of the carries, at least for the most part. Is the one
Yeah.
thing I'm a little bit concerned about, because if you look at the Broncos and how they're dealing with their current depth
Mm,
chart right now, it's got J.K. Dobbins ahead of him. And
okay.
that's the one concern that I have, is that by the time that he goes in, it's not going to be quite there. I think, at least in this case, for the most part, if you want to wait on quarterback and not take a Joe Burrow, you can look at the quarterbacks who are left there. But I'd be tempted just to roll with getting the likes, at least, of who was the other guy who was there? Just rolling with Smith for the most part, at least with all of that, was what I was tempted to, because of just
Yeah.
guaranteed 800 plus yards and 9 touchdowns a season. It seems like, at least, would be one of the things you can at least have. If you are able to trade in this league, that's another thing, at least for the most part, too, is if you got like 5 great wide receivers, you can always trade for a top running back for a team, for someone who needs one too. But that's just the one concern I have, is
Yeah.
that Harvey ends up not being a David Johnson, but ends up being more of like what we saw from Trey Benson last year.
I'm going in on Harvey because I think you're absolutely right. That's a risk, and I'm gonna have to take more running backs to kind of
Mm,
I'm running out of time to kind of mitigate that risk, right?
right.
I do think I'm pretty comfortable with my receiving room at some depth with that. So
That's why
I
Burrow
went
was the
ahead.
other one on the board, potentially, if you wanted to see them.
Yeah,
Maybe you're weaker at running back, but you got your quarterback set with all the other receivers that are there for high volume. So it's all part of fantasy football. Trying to predict it becomes the funniest thing in the world for the most part.
yeah, for sure. Um, let's see. Now we're at Marcos, right? Marcos, what is your prediction? Your random prediction for this year?
Well, I made it earlier, so now I got to pick another prediction that I have to do. It was with Marvin Harrison Jr. going over 1,000 yards, almost like a guarantee. Um, what did I say would be my next prediction? I predict that if this offense does not look the way it's gonna look, that Drew Petzing's gonna get fired. I think that's my prediction. Is not to say that I don't like Drew. I do respect the scheme, and aside from what people say about this offense is kind of balanced. They call run plays, no, they call pass plays at the 14th rank, which means like they're kind of in the middle. But I do think that if for some reason the run game is still good and explosive, but they can't get their act in the passing game, at the end of this year, Drew is going to be gone.
Okay. Blake, what is your random pick? This random prediction.
So going back to college, Trey McBride has never had more than 4 touchdowns in a season. I think the only other one that he actually had that got the 5th was technically a special teams touchdown, but there would be times where you'd watch the film and he would get tackled like 2 yards short of the end zone. We also saw last year he got a ton of red zone targets. It just didn't connect. My bold prediction is that he gets 9, not 10, but 9 touchdown
Mm.
catches this year, and then he never sniffs that many touchdowns again, because I think he's just not built as far as that same sort of, like, you have to scheme touchdowns with how it works with Kyler. I just think that he's more confident and comfortable with the way that he throws, of going to outside targets, of running the football, and then of handing it off to James Conner up the middle. But I think this year they make it a priority where teams are just going to say, we're not going to let Marvin score on us. We know that James Conner is going to be there. And I think that they're just going to have one of these random years where Trey McBride goes off for 9 touchdowns, and then he just doesn't sniff the same level of touchdowns in the red zone ever again after that.
I have 2 picks until my turn, so I'm going to kind of start talking my prediction, and then when my turn is here, we'll get there. Mine is going to be not. I'm going to keep it simple, but my prediction is that this team has a top 10 defense.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not saying that the talent on the team across the board is at a top 10 talent level. There's a lot of young players that are developing. This is a combination of my belief in Nick Rallis as a defensive coordinator and my belief that they've done a good job of addressing weaknesses and there's enough talent and there's some talent that I think will take some steps. There's some that might have a little bit of a rough go about it. But I think between the scheme and the talent they do have, they're going to cover for that. And they're also going to grind this out a little bit. The strategy they're going to play with the run control offense is going to keep the defense off the field some. So I think, and it obviously depends how do you measure, right? DVOA versus yards. Probably more leaning towards the yards allowed side of things because of the style of offense and defense they're going to play. But I'm going to predict a top 10 defense for them this year. And hopefully the offense can just be more consistent. And if they can pull that off, they're going to have a really good season. My turn is next. I've got 2 running backs, 3 receivers. So all my starting running backs, receivers there. I've got a flex, a tight end, and a quarterback to pick. Jalen Waddle, Zay Flowers, Ted McMillan, Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore. A lot of receivers there. I'm up. They just took DeAndre Swift.
It's pretty easy for me in this one, at least.
Oh, yeah?
For the most part. It's Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley.
Because when you take a look at least as far as for who are the other receivers for the Titans that they have for the most part, like that, you look at how their offense is going to be with their defense being poor as far as the garbage time. You look at how they've connected already this preseason. I think between him and Tet, I would say take the veteran. Okay. And then when it comes down to with Jalen Waddle, as far as with the health being a question concern, and then we've seen how Zay Flowers has done super well with Baltimore, but a lot of their attack, at least with adding another receiver, with having Lamar run, I think that we're going to end up seeing a lot of connections with Calvin Ridley, especially within that passing offense that the former Bengals offensive coordinator has had. That, to me, is a pretty easy choice to be able to make because when you think about rookie quarterback coming in and connecting with a veteran wide receiver, that just is very similar to Kyler Murray finding a Larry Fitzgerald, all that he did in his rookie season.
All right. Do we have any other votes from our panel? Kyler and Marcos, what do you think with the guys that I have here available to me? Jalen Waddle, Zay Flowers.
Roll the dice on a Travis Hunter.
DJ Moore, Travis Hunter, David Montgomery if we want to go running back, Pacheco, Olave, Tyrone Tracy, New York, Ricky Pearsall.
I would be considering Jalen Waddle. Mm-hmm. He has done well for me in the past when Tyreek Hill is not someone I would totally rely on this season. But also you would have to rely on Tua to get him the ball, which is definitely a sketchy thing, and also to not have like 3 concussions. So I get avoiding him. I got 24 seconds left. I'm going to let the bye week be the tiebreaker on those and go with Ridley because I have another player with a week 12 bye.
It's a good call.
If all things being equal, right? Now, I would tell you in the way this draft is set up, some like upcoming picks are going to be guys that my keepers, so we'll see. I think I still have another pick or two before one that's auto-picked because of my keeper. Okay. Thank you for the insight and the input, folks. Okay. So that was my kind of random, was that I think they're top 10 defense. Everyone got their random pick in, right? So now we get to the final thing that we're going to talk about. And I'll go ahead and kind of start us off in the serpentine draft style we've been going. Our record and postseason predictions for the 2025 season. I do think, we've talked about this year 3 of the rebuild. I've talked about this ad nauseum on my channel. There's a 3-year rebuild process. Year 1 is roster turnover. You're kind of your team has kind of got some life to them, but they just don't get the wins because you don't have the roster talent. Year 2, you have better roster talent, more of the system in place. You make a push for the playoffs, but you usually kind of barely miss it. This is what we saw with the Cardinals. This is what the Lions did in year 2. And year 3 is the year it comes together and you make the playoffs. And if it doesn't, then you got to change something after that. So I think they go 10-7. I think it's a little bit tough schedule at points later on down the road, but I think they go 10-7. And I'm just going even be optimistic, say they win a playoff game, but I'm not predicting a deep playoff run yet. That's kind of my prediction for this season. What say you, Blake Murphy, number 7?
Yeah, I think we may know based off of the first 4 games of the season if the Cardinals are going to need the final 4 games of the season to have a successful season. So they open up with the Saints, and then you've got a home game against the Panthers. The way that these teams have been built, for the most part, you're hoping that you can catch the Panthers early with the rookie receiver, Ted McMillan, and his Arizona homecoming, for those of you who are University of Arizona fans. But then you play the Niners and then the Seahawks 4 days later. If you end up losing to the Panthers, if you can't get past the Niners, and you're looking at 1-3 staring at you in the face against the Seahawks on a short game, it's at home, but on short rest, that's where your season may come down to getting enough of a push in those early 4 games. Because you can flip it the other way. You could say the Niners are weak. They won't have Brandon Ayuk. They've been pretty beat up this entire offseason. The Saints are a team that you're expecting them to go in against a young quarterback and be able to hopefully trounce if you can, knowing that the Saints are just talent-wise probably in a different spot than Arizona, although first games you never know. You can get by one of the Panthers or the Seahawks, then you're talking about getting off to a 3-1 sort of start for the most part, at least like that one, if you're able to take care of business there. That means that you can maybe drop a game or two late in the season, but you'll still have to put it away because the end of the season, you've got the Rams, the Texans, the Falcons, and then you wrap up against the Bengals and the Rams yet again. If you end up getting off to a slow start, even if you make up stuff in the middle of the schedule with games against the Titans, the Colts, then you're going to be running into it. The season could very quickly get out of order where you're now having to win some of these games late in the season to kind of salvage it. So I think at least what I've got them for is the same as you, Joe, 10-7. If I can see the Cardinals be able to see Sam Darnold regress a bit from his season last year, then maybe you could say, hey, if the Cardinals, maybe they pick up a game, could get 4-2 in the division, and we see one of these teams we're expecting to be good stumble, maybe you could talk me into 11 wins and being able to push for the division crown, because I think the Cardinals are the most stable team as of right yet. Seahawks have changed out their entire offense. Niners, we've talked about how beat up they are. And the Rams with Matthew Stafford are just a huge unknown for the most part this year. So that's where, if that known quality comes in, you can probably say the Cardinals should be aiming at double-digit wins this season. If they don't get there, there's going to be a lot of questions that we'll be able to talk about after that point.
Real quick before we go to Marcos, I just want to say thanks. We got a couple folks who just joined as channel members, so thank you so much. We've got Lorenzo Teohaftawa. I hope I got even close. I know we tried pronouncing that last time when we were on Jackie's podcast, but thank you so much for your support. And we have a longtime supporter of the channel, becoming a member, Dana, who does really awesome just analysis. If you're not paying attention to Dana in the chat, you need to. She's in our Discord server. Again, if you're not in the Discord server, there's a link in the description of this video. We have a great community of folks who love talking Cardinals. Lorenzo saying, I believe we're an 11+ win team. I could also see anywhere from 9 to 14. Just depends on injuries and calling in the refs. Yeah, I mean, there's some range of outcomes right there. So Dana needs her own channel. Dana, absolutely. As soon as Dana decides that Dana wants to do some sort of content, it's going to be fire. So I think there's an interesting range of outcomes there. So Marcos, what is your prediction for wins, loss, and or playoffs this year?
Yeah, I think they're going to make it to the playoffs, and the 10 win mark is a magic number. It just seems like that's the most fitting thing for a team that's on their third year of their rebuild process. Because, I mean, last year we went, 8-9? We only missed it by 2 games, and you can kind of say that if it wasn't for, like, one play being the difference in the outcome, we would either be in the playoffs, we would either be a 10-win team, and we're looking sky high when it comes to the future of the Cardinals. So I say 10-7, make the playoffs. Unfortunately, I wish I had more, I had more faith in this team to win a playoff game. I don't think we would win a playoff game. I think it'd be an early exit, but that's fine because you made the playoffs in your third year, your rebuild.
Kyler, what say you?
I'm deeply sorry, Blake. I already forgot what number you said, but I think I'm gonna make it a sweep and just say 10-7. Did you also say 10-7? Yeah, I think whole panel is 10-7. That feels right for this team. This feels right for this schedule. And like Blake was saying, our best path to that number and to the playoffs is to sort of repeat the recipe of 2021, which was that beautiful 7-0 start that gave us the leeway to completely fall apart after the bye and still have enough wins to make the playoffs, which we did with 11 wins that year. So the way that the very brutal back end of this schedule finishes, like what, 4 games in a row on the road with teams like the Bengals, crazy potent offense, and then of course, which it feels like every damn year we end with the Rams and something terrible happens and your heart gets yanked out of you. Starting 6-0 is very possible this year with this schedule: Saints, Panthers, Niners, Seahawks, Titans, Colts. You can start 6-0 there. Will we also possibly lose right before the bye to the Green Bay Packers yet again, just like 2021? Absolutely, we will. But hopefully, we can survive the bye.
especially
Like,
now.
yeah, like AVB was saying somewhere in one of his comments, we need T-shirts that say "Win the bye week" or "Beat bye week." Yes, if we can maintain a momentum from a 6-0 start, then we can attain 10 wins this year. Uh, And with the way the NFC West is set up this year, 10 wins could win the division. Is it likely to? Maybe not. But winning the NFC West is not a completely out of pocket thing for this team to do this year. It is possible for us to go from third to winning this division with the various situations in Seattle and San Francisco. And, if all of the discs in 37-year-old Matt Stafford's back just explode.
I had a goal for tonight to go an hour, and I am notorious for going an hour and a half when I say 45 minutes and 3 hours when I say an hour. The fact that we're sitting at an hour and 5 minutes, I'm taking that as a W.
Yeah, that's
Like,
huge.
that's a dub, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it
overtime. Good
a little bit
overtime.
over, but listen, I'm long-winded and my panel has great insights. That's my graceful way of saying we're all long-winded, right? And so the fact that we're getting you out of here in less than an hour and a half to me is a freaking miracle, right? But we're going to have plenty more to talk about this season. Blake and Marcus are going to be setting up, and you'll see more details in the coming days. Their podcast streaming on here, and then still available on all the audio platforms. Where if you have an RSS feed and you listen, that's stay consistent. But where you're also going to see is some additional Cardinal Rule podcasts coming through there. And then you're going to see me and Kyler every Tuesday night doing reviews and previews, talking about the games, and we may have some rotating guests. And then you're going to see Jackie and Colby doing their podcasts, and we'll see maybe a few more folks coming into the TCR family. But we're just going to kind of build one nice big family of content creators who all love the Cardinals and are all here to try to bring you good content from different perspectives. So I'm excited to be working with my friends here. I think it's going to be a great season and an exciting season for the Cardinals. Oh, I'm on the board. I'm taking Tyrone Tracy. I need another running back. All right. So real quick, everyone give their shout outs and we're going to get out of here. Kylo, let's start with you.
Hey guys, you know me. You can find me on Twitter. Same handle I've always had. Go ahead and follow me there. You can follow my writing on Sports Illustrated as well.
Marcus.
You can also find me on Twitter or /X and at Pancake Soul. That's my Twitter handle. You see it on the screen. Also at Redbird Reboot. We have a YouTube channel as well. You can find us there. Me and Blake Murphy 7.
Blake.
Yeah, you can find that at Blake Murphy 7, like he said. And then make sure you're finding the Redbird Reboot podcast. We will be migrating our podcast and kind of merging it with a lot of Joe and Jackie and everyone else's audio content, which is going to be great stuff because that means you guys will get to listen to a whole bunch more shows in addition to the content we've been putting out and that Joe's been putting out, Kyler's been putting out. I got to say, we didn't even get to talk about the fact that the Cardinals this year, we've always talked about their bye week blues. They get the Cowboys out of the bye. The Micah Parson-less Cowboys out of the bye week. If there's a year to beat the bye week, this has got to be the year for them.
100%. That's the thing that's kind of helped me make it through the lean years as a Cardinals fan is when we beat the Cowboys, which we've kind of done a good job of that in recent years. right? So we've had that to look forward to. So listen, I'm excited for another year of Cardinals football. I'm excited to see what year 3 of the rebuild does, and I'm excited to work with all these wonderful folks on the screen here with you. So everyone, have a great night. We're going to get out of here, and we will see you next week. Go Cards.